The Nebraska Cattlemen's annual meeting is underway in Kearney. I'm Susan Littlefield on the Rural Radio Network. One of the speakers yesterday just happened to be Dan Halstrom, who is president and CEO of the U.S. Meat Export Federation. We sat down to talk about what he sees going forward into 2025 and some shining opportunities that happened in 24.
Yeah, honestly, there's a very great partner in Nebraska Beef Council and Nebraska Cattlemen. It's good. It's just great to be here. And we had a really good discussion around trade. And, you know, a year ago at this time when we were talking about what's 2024 going to look like, our estimate was that business would probably be down. And we threw out 10% a year ago. And the reality is that business is steady to down 1% on volume, but it's up 5%, second highest ever on value. So in that regard, we totally underestimated what would happen this year in a good way. And I think one of the main themes I tried to convey was that, I've been watching this a long time, and beef demand globally is, well, it's record-breaking in certain countries, but in general, it's just darn solid. And the example I give is in past times when we had droughts and we have the down cycle, the question we always used to get was, well, when's the price going to go down? What we're getting now is not that question so much. The question is, when will we see more heifers retained? When will we see the production cycle increase? And in the meantime, what can we do since there's not enough short plates, for example? So it really turns into a much more constructive discussion with a lot of these buyers who are very well educated around the world. And we're seeing a lot of progress with cuts that maybe weren't such a focus, like rounds, for example. So in that regard, it's a bit of a positive.
You know, and I think as economies continue to grow and personal budgets continue to grow and wealth, that passion and that desire for better proteins continues around the world.
Exactly, yeah. You've got generic population growth, but the real key is, as you just said, it's the emerging middle class. The spending power in places like Guatemala, places like Mexico, places like Colombia. It's amazing to see what's happening because, I use the example, we hit a choice cutout of close to 330 here earlier this year, and you know what? They kept buying. And I think that's the message. They're paying for our quality. And we have some of the best, highest quality product in the world, and it's not the cheapest, nor do we want it to be the cheapest. And I think when we can get that discussion going on, hey, this is what we have, and it's going to take time to rebuild the herd. But in the meantime, let's work on some other things here. And I think it's a very proactive discussion, and not just with the big markets. Of course, Japan and Korea, they've understood this forever. But the Guatemalas, the Panamas, the Perus, and the Colombias, this is new territory, and it's really a welcome sight to see them really approaching it with more of a long-term picture.
Well, and I look at countries like South Africa, which continues to grow, and not only in their agricultural perspective, but just in, again, that middle class. They want that better quality. And there's so many untouched nations out there, or just that you guys are on the brink of really pushing into.
Yeah, that is also part of the strategy, is to diversify and expand into different markets. Now, doesn't mean that your traditional markets, Japan, Mexico, Korea, Canada, are not important. They are. But there's a decided strategy to allocate a certain amount of our resources over here on these newer emerging regions to try to expedite that growth. And, Central America is a good example. South America, Chile, Peru, Colombia, Africa, as you mentioned. And it's not just South Africa. I would argue that it's really more about the Angolas of the world and the West Africas and the Moroccos. So there's a lot of things out there. Now, a lot of these regions, another one being Indonesia, very complex, very sophisticated, a lot of problems. But every market starts that way. And once you figure it out and work your way through it and establish your reputation, you really start to benefit. And we're seeing that in Central America today.
And everybody's got a different palate, which means different cut opportunities.
Yep, putting the right cut in the right market to maximize value. So a tongue might bring $12 a pound in Japan. In fact, it is today. But in Peru, it wouldn't. But maybe tripe in Peru is the delicacy. Those are both center of the plate items in those two countries. Meanwhile, on the round, we're starting to see Taiwan and Korea take more of the round because they can't get enough chuck rolls. This is what it's all about, maximizing the carcass, working with the trade in these countries to educate them about how to prepare some of these cuts they may not be used to. That's what we do. That's what all of our funding sources like Nebraska Cattlemen and Nebraska Beef Council pay us to do, and we're seeing the benefit.
You look at that, what are areas that you would like to see in 2025 more effort put on to increase them to U.S. proteins?
Yeah, I think Southeast Asia as a whole, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, all of these countries, those three regions, a lot of potential, but also a lot of issues. And our technical team is working. In fact, we just had meetings earlier in the week on this. There's a myriad of issues, which is why it doesn't grow as fast as you want. But that you got to knock them down one by one, because in the end, when you get that done, then that paves the way for really significant growth rather than just small growth. So.
That's my conversation with Dan Halstrom, attending the Nebraska Cattlemen's annual meeting. I'm Susan Littlefield, the Rural Radio Network.